old man quietly showed up at the Navy base with a worn binder in his hands. He was stopped by a young officer who called him a tourist. What happened next brought the entire base to a standstill. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The sun was already high over Norfolk Naval Base when Raymond "Hawk" Dalton, a 78-year-old retired Master Chief with 4 rows of ribbons and a knee that hadn't worked right since Vietnam, stepped quietly onto the dock wearing a faded USS Hornet cap and holding a worn leather binder close to his chest, the kind of binder officers used back when orders were handwritten and paper meant permanence. And inside it were orders dated 1969, a letter from a long-dead captain, and a promise Hawk made to a brother-in-arms whose name was etched on the wall in D.C., a promise that brought him back to this very pier 56 years later. But, as he reached the base of the gangway, a young Navy lieutenant in dress white stepped forward, crisp, confident, and condescending, holding out a firm palm and saying the words that cracked the air like a shot. "Sir, this ship doesn't take tourists." And just like that, the dock went still, a quiet tension bristling between the old warhorse who'd buried more friends than medals, and the officer who hadn't smelled cordite or felt steel shake under fire. And Hawk, ever respectful, ever steady, simply said, "Lieutenant, I'm not a tourist," while the younger man, scanning him with narrowed eyes, dismissed the binder as memorabilia, the jacket as outdated, and the man himself as irrelevant, instructing the sentry nearby to escort this civilian off the premises before his voice could echo up the deck and embarrass the uniform. And as the security approached, Hawk didn't raise his voice or make a scene, just looked past them at the gray hull of the USS Hornet and whispered, "We brought her home once. I just need to bring something back." But the guards didn't care about whispered memories or folded flags. They had protocols, and old men didn't make the list unless it was Memorial Day, and they had prearranged clearance or family on board. And this man had none. So they moved to escort him gently at first, until Hawk reached into the binder and pulled out a black and white photo of a man standing at attention beside him. Both young, both dirty from battle, both unaware that only one of them would survive Da Nang, and beneath the photo was a single signature in red ink. Master Chief R. Dalton is to receive full boarding access upon request. Signed, Captain William Hargrove. 1969, a document yellowed by time but sealed, dated, and authenticated by Naval Command from an era when men bled on their paperwork. And yet the lieutenant chuckled under his breath, saying, "That was before my father was born. Sir," and turned his back, motioning the guards again. But this time Hawk didn't move. This time he stood like a mast, shoulders squared, as the ship's whistle suddenly bellowed once from up top, not for him, not yet, but enough to draw attention from a few sailors on deck, who saw the old man standing defiantly on the pier, and one of them, a young machinist named Taylor, recognized the patch on Hawk's jacket, a rare emblem from the Ghost Salvage Squadron, a decommissioned group that once performed deep-sea recoveries under hostile conditions, known only to black-inked reports and whispered at SEAL reunions. Taylor disappeared into the bridge, while Hawk held his ground. Security growing more tense, the lieutenant now angry and pacing, and then, like thunder rolling across the harbor, a new voice shouted from the upper deck, "Belay that order!" And all heads turned as a rear admiral stepped out, ribbons gleaming, white cap sharp against the morning light, and shouted, "Is that Master Chief Dalton?" The lieutenant stammered, "Yes, sir. But Before being cut off by the admiral marching down the gangway himself, pushing past the guards and stopping before Hawk with a look of reverence. Not pity, and said, "Sir, I read about you. You and Hargrove pulled 6 men from a burning engine room in 1969 and patched her hull under fire. You're not a tourist. You're part of this ship's spine." And then he saluted, a full, deliberate salute that caught the wind and froze everyone on the pier, including the lieutenant, who suddenly looked very, very small. And as the Admiral invited Hawk aboard, the old man hesitated, then handed him the binder, whispering, "I promised I'd return his ashes to the sea where he last stood post." And the Admiral nodded solemnly, ordered all hands to attention on the port side. And within minutes the crew lined the rails in dress whites while Hawk, escorted by Taylor and 2 chiefs, walked slowly across the deck he hadn't touched in half a century, each step echoing memory, loss, and honor. And when they reached the stern, the Admiral gave him the mic, and Hawk, with voice weathered but clear, told them about Hargrove, the captain who stayed behind to close the blast doors on a flooding compartment to save his men, the friend who asked for one favor. "If I don't make it home, Ray, bring me back to the Hornet one last time." And as Hawk opened the urn and released the ashes into the wind, the entire deck went silent, even the waves seeming to pause. And then, from the bridge, the boatswain's whistle rang. The flag dipped, and taps began to play on a single brass bugle, not for ceremony but for remembrance. And back on the pier, the lieutenant stood motionless, his pride broken, his uniform still clean but his understanding stained with shame. And when Hawk stepped down, he paused before the young man, looked him in the eye, and said, "Son, never forget that this uniform doesn't make the man. The man makes the memory." And then he walked past, flanked by sailors who now regarded him not as a relic, but as a legend. And days later, a plaque appeared near the ship's entrance, in honor of Master Chief Raymond Dalton and the silent promises that sail beyond the sea. And while Hawk returned home to his modest cottage by the shore, sipping black coffee and staring at the horizon, the Navy quietly reclassified a forgotten salvage mission under his name, declassifying files that now bear testament to lives saved by hands that once bled in silence. And at the next base tour, visitors paused before that plaque, never knowing the full weight behind it. But every sailor on the Hornet knew the story now, knew what it meant to earn a salute when no one was watching. And somewhere deep in his soul, so did the lieutenant, who now carried Hawk's binder with him on every inspection, as a reminder that some men don't ask for honor, they just live in a way that commands it.